Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik with Figure It Out Productions. The following video is part of our Quick Shoot series. Hey guys, it's Adam here. Recently I took a trip up to Canada. While I was there, I quickly realized I had forgotten my camera because I am a moron. So I apologize in advance because all the footage in this video was shot on my phone. But while I was there, I actually met up with a very friendly guy named Scott. I call him Scott the Canadian. He showed me his boxed Amiga CD32. This is actually the North American model, only released in Canada. Quite impressive, actually, that someone actually has one of those, but that's not the point of this video. He ended up taking me to a very cool place called Super 1-Up Games, so I wanted to give you guys a tour of that store. So here's the front of the place, pretty cool. It's in Hamilton, Ontario, in case you're not aware. That's Julian right there. He actually drove out just to come hang out with Scott and me, who you saw for a moment there. Let's go inside, shall we? On the left here, you got a bunch of comic books. Those are the more rare comic books, I suppose. Up in front, you can see a few people. There's Mrs. Claus, aka Philippa, my girlfriend. She was in the middle of purchasing something. Now back there, they got a bunch of cool items, the rare games. Over here, you got a bunch of Xbox stuff, original stuff. There's, of course, Scott the Canadian. Yes, that's why I'm pointing at him, because he's Canadian, and he's Scott. There's Julian, who I think will make a cameo again. Bunch of PS2 stuff all along the wall here. Some Wii stuff. Back there, you got some of the more rarer titles for various consoles. You got some T-shirts. Oh, there was a Dreamcast shirt there. I almost pulled the trigger on that, but then ultimately didn't. Over here, of course, another look at some GameCube and Wii and PS3 over there on the left. Just a heads up, at the time I make this video, the Canadian dollar is weaker than the American dollar, so when you look at a price, like for example this Game Genie, one on the left by the Galoob, the one on the right, the rare one made by Comerica, when you see a price like that, to translate it to the US dollar, you have to basically take about 20% off. So think of it that way. So if it looks overpriced to you, take about 20% off, and that's what it's actually cost by US dollar standards. At least, again, at the time I make this video. But anyway, so you see a bunch of other cool stuff back there. A lot of PS1 games, some candy machines actually, a bunch of Xbox 360 stuff, some arcade machines. Over here you got some, it looks like kind of like overstocked accessories. Then a bunch of Atari 2600 games. In here you got a bunch of Master System stuff and television. A lot of rarer things are in that case, like a Shining Force demo, a complete NES collection, all the loose carts. Now that's not for sale. This is like their back room. I didn't really go any further than this, even though nobody stopped me. I'm sure I could have, but I really didn't want to, because it didn't look very public. But yeah, again, there's a machine there. Ninja Turtles in Time. That's pretty fun. Blu-rays, they've got a bunch in stock, and some DVDs in stock. I didn't really pay too much attention to this because I wasn't there for that. A lot of sports games, Xbox, PS2, GameCube. They have a DDR machine, Street Fighter 3, I think, Third Strike. Crap ton of comic books. Mrs. Claus was pretty excited about that. She spent a lot of time there. A lot of games for the Neo Geo CD, TurboGrafx, PC Engine, Dreamcast. There's a lot of Dreamcast in there. Even some PAL exclusives and Japanese exclusives as well. They have a bunch of consoles set up and television set up. I'm not sure exactly what that's for. I assume they do some sort of tournament type of thing, but I didn't really ask anybody, so I guess I should have done that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the whole store. And in just a moment, I'll show you all my pickups. Thank you again to Julian and Scott for coming out, and thank you to Mrs. Claus for not leaving me. So I got a few things there, nothing super special. Just a couple of games I was either looking for or caught my eye, or for, one reason or another. Just sometimes you just walk in a store and you just see something and it pulls you for some reason. So I like the original Xbox. I don't think that's any real secret. So I try to pick up a lot of titles for it because they're cheap and they're usually pretty good versions, and sometimes they're just interesting, and it's also nice to see what you missed out on when the console was relevant. So I got a few games for the Xbox. First up is Capcom Fighting Evolution, which seems to be a compilation of various Street Fighter games and other fighting games. Street Fighter Alpha, Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 3, Darksiders, and Red Earth. I don't know exactly if it's just independent releases, like an arcade type of thing, or if they somehow combined into some super game. I don't know enough about this, but picked it up, looked interesting. Dukes of Hazzard, Return of the General Lee. I don't really know anything about Dukes of Hazzard, but I have never seen this game before, and I don't know why that is. I don't know if it was uncommon or what the deal was, but I've never seen it, and so it caught my eye, so I picked it up. Taito Legends. One of the few games published by Sega for the original Xbox I did not have. That's really the only reason I got it, and it was pretty cheap. X-Men, The Next Dimension. I had never knew this came out on the original Xbox. I never even heard of it. I think it's a TV show that was relevant at the time, And I have the other, well, I don't have the other X-Men games, I'm still looking for those, but those are much more common. I like X-Men Legends and stuff, but I don't remember ever seeing this, so that's why I picked this up. This one's kind of embarrassing, but I picked it up because it's rare and they didn't want much for it. You will laugh, because this is a very stupid game and belongs on a wall of shame, and I'm the first to admit it. Shambo's Deep Sea Adventures. This is usually like a $30 game, something like that. They only wanted 5 Canadian, which is like 4 US. So yeah, I bought it. Yes, okay. It was super cheap considering what it usually goes for. And who knows, maybe one day, original Xbox, I'll want a whole set, and I won't want to have passed on something like this when I, you know, could have only paid $4 relatively, and then now I have to go find it for like 30, 40 bucks or whatever it ends up being. So glad to have it, though I don't think I'll ever really play it. This one's my big regret. This was completely a fuck up on my part. I did not mean to do this. I got Mortal Kombat for the PS3. Not saying the game's bad, don't get me wrong. This is a game I've wanted to check out for a while. Everyone said the PS3 version is like the definitive superior version. It's one of the few multiplats in the 7th gen that where the PS3 version was better. Usually the case was that the 360 version was better because it was friendlier hardware for developers, but in this case they really pushed in favor of the PS3. And so why do I regret this one? Well, I'm an idiot. I walked out without the disc. That was kind of a mixture of my fault, and I kind of want to say it was a little bit their fault, because most used game stores, when you go in, they'll have the case there and they won't have the disc inside. And it's generally assumed that they have the disc behind the shelf, but because this is Canada, that's not really the case. All of them have the disc inside already, and this was the first one I looked at and it didn't click, and then by the time I noticed I was already back in my hotel, so it wasn't worth going back, because this only cost $4 Canadian. No, $5 Canadian, $4 American, so whatever. All the DLC vouchers for whatever reason were still valid, so if I ever do get the disc, not the worst deal ever, so whatever. This one was really cool. I've been looking for this for quite some time, and I have not seen it since it came out, so it was really cool to get it. For the GameCube, Puyo Pop Fever. This came out on the... This is, I think, one of the only games that is completely cross 6th gen, and that includes the Dreamcast. Oh yes. It came out on the GameCube, the PS2, Xbox, and Dreamcast. Dreamcast, it was the last Sega Dreamcast game officially made by Sega. Not published, but officially made, but in-house developed. I have the Xbox version as well, which only came out in Europe for whatever reason. The GameCube version is hard to find to some extent, but it's nice to have it. The only one I'm missing now is actually the PS2 version, so hopefully I can get that, because it'd be really nice to do some sort of comparison video with all of them at some point, but that'd be neat. But there you go, Puyo Pop Fever for the GameCube, and for whatever reason it was called Puyo Puyo Fever on the Dreamcast. And finally, speaking of the Dreamcast, I got something for the Dreamcast. I don't usually get to get new Dreamcast stuff because I have most of it, I know, first world problems. But I got MP3 DC. All this is MP3 software for the Dreamcast. Obviously I'm not really going to use it because it's not really practical, but it's just a neat little peripheral that was made by Pelican. So just cool to have. That's really all it is. Just some neat little thing. Comes with a manual and everything, and there's the disc. Basically all that you do is you pop that in, and then it boots up, and then you swap it out and just put in like a CDR full of MP3s, not a music CD. Just, you know, because music CDs have they're basically wave formats, so they can only fit X amount of songs on there, usually like within the 20 range. But with MP3s, obviously they're much smaller, so you can fit a lot more. So that was basically the idea, was that you just make basically a music CD with a lot more music on it. Of course, this all predates things like MP3 players and iPods, and hell, that's all out of date now. We all have like smartphones and everything. But little cool peripheral that I wanted to pick up. So there you go. That's everything I got at Super 1-Up Games. It was a very nice little store. If you are ever in Hamilton, Ontario, I think it's definitely worth checking out. I want to thank Scott for driving me out there, and also want to thank Julian for just showing up. A really cool guy. Met up with him and his buddy Mike the day before at Toy Rat, or like the 2 days before at Toy Rat, and I told him, hey, you know, if you want to hang out, Scott and I will be at Super 1-Up Games. And he's like, definitely, and he just showed up. So thank you for coming out. That was really cool of you, and thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you all later.